Mr. Scott Drozd. How's it going, man?
Chris, it's going well. It's a beautiful Monday here. So excited to have some finally some spring weather.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're getting it too at 70 degrees. I wish I could have the garage door open, but then all the neighborhood kids come over and start looking at what I'm doing and everything like that. So it's not going to work. So I got to suffer with the closed garage door. When I was prepping for this interview yesterday, my daughter came running in and she had a little tape thing. Like the other kids had put tape on her shirt and it said employee on her shirt, like with little masking tape, employee. And I said, what is that? What is this employee thing? She's like, I just got hired. The kids down the street are selling candy and I am now an employee.
Oh,
and
look at that.
I was thinking about, talking to you and like entrepreneurship and stuff like that. And I was trying to think back in the day if I had any entrepreneur stories from when I was a kid. And I think most kids do the lemonade stand, but I'm just wondering if someone like you who ends up, being part of a company that is so large, was there any entrepreneurial angles that you were after as a kid that went beyond lemonade stand?
Yep. So Nick and I, we're big golfers. So we got into golf and decided that we can go buy the components, the shafts and the grips and the heads. And we had a little operation in our basement where we epoxy the golf clubs together. And, back in the day in Connecticut, there was something called bargain news. And, we would start selling our custom made golf clubs on the bargain news. And my dad helped us out with this. We were probably 15, 16. And we ended up selling a $300 set of tailor-made replica knockoff drivers. And the gentleman bought it. He was from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and he went on a golf trip. And when he returned from the golf trip, he immediately called us up. My dad called my dad, and as he was golfing, the heads on the drivers flew off. And so he ended up driving up to my parents' house and knocking on the door, wanting his money back. So my dad was like, that's it. We're done. You guys are not selling golf clubs. You're not making golf clubs anymore. We actually had a business. It was called CNS Golf, Club Makers Nick and Scott. So that was probably one of our earliest ventures together. Out of many, but that's
so that was just like a flyer. Did you just print out a little ad that just had a picture of some knockoff golf club? Call us, come visit our basement. We'll get you dialed in.
Yeah, it was easy. So, we had a lot of hits. So yeah, there's a print ad and it was easy to advertise and there was a demand.
So Nick's parents, your friend, owned FCP Euro, right?
They owned Foreign Carports of Groton. So it was a little brick and mortar auto parts store in Groton, Connecticut. So it was Nick's dad. Nick and I grew up in the store. He was behind the counter with his dad. I was a delivery truck driver. And, we were just in high school making extra spending money. And we both went to the University of Connecticut. And when we were up at UConn, Nick decided, hey, I've got dial-up internet. I've got eBay. I'm thinking about selling some of my parents' products
dial-up internet.
Online.
How long does it take to upload decent photos to eBay on dial-up internet, man?
When we started, there wasn't even. You would have to wait at least 60 seconds to 180 seconds for just to release an auction.
Brutal.
So it was painful. So that's where it started. It started out of the dorm room, Nick's dorm room, selling just import replacement parts. That was sitting on his parents'
the back catalog, like the back of the shop. Because my buddy had South Central Imports, which was a Volkswagen repair shop here. And if you went, there was a back room with black and white tile floor, and there was a bunch of shelves in there. And if you walked in there, it was like, whoa, look at all these old parts for Rabbits and Mark 1s and Mark 2 Jettas and old Audi Coupe GTs. Like all these parts that nobody's bringing a car there anymore. Nobody's bringing a Volkswagen Rabbit to a shop to have it repaired. It just ain't happening. And at what time he goes, hey man, why don't you put this stuff on eBay? I'll give you 10% of the profits. If you just sell it, you take care of my inventory. Like what was the impetus of getting these parts and putting them on eBay? Were they old stock? Was it just everything? What was the idea?
It just started because, Nick had some good ideas of what was high demand from his dad's shop. So it was exactly as you pictured it. I think there was still a checkered floor. There's a little golden retriever laying on the ground. There was the big Beck Arnley catalogs. So it started with BMW E30 trunk struts and Volvo, the W917 man filters, just high demand products that people were coming in the store. So Nick said, hey, we've got, let me see if I put them up on eBay and what happens. And Bingo. It was just like that. Just started to sell.
Was there any other alternative? Like, where were people buying parts those days? What's the landscape like as a guy that wants a part for something? Am I going to, I can't even remember what it was like for me, because most of my shit was held together with like coat hangers and bubble gum. So I wasn't even really buying parts, but I guess you just kind of went to your local Napa and just said, hey, do you have
that's
this?
it. You went to your local Napa or your local import parts store and you asked if they had this in stock, because there was really essentially nothing online yet. I mean, we were the first to move on eBay. When we were on eBay, there was nobody really selling any automotive parts. So we were kind of at the frontier of selling automotive parts online. But yeah, it was most customers were just going to their local stores to find replacement parts.
So was this like an intelligent move by you guys, or did you stumble on this? Like, were you guys, I guess that's maybe the wrong way to put it. Did you guys see this opportunity and then seize that opportunity? Or did you put the stuff on there and go, oh my God, there's something here? Like, which one of those two things came first?
It was, oh my God, there's something here. There was no thoughtfulness. This was, hey, young kids, extra spending money. Let's figure out a way any way we can to make money. And, it just so happened we stumbled upon, the online, the eBay, and with Nick's parents' inventory, it clicked. And there was a point probably after, a year or two that we were like, oh shit, something is going on here.
And what did his parents think of this?
They didn't even know if it was legal. So they were concerned. They didn't know the landscape of the internet or eBay. So they were very, very skeptical on where this was headed. They had originally, when we decided to go online, they owned 66% of the online entity. So it was the parents, organization, and they allowed their son and their friend to take it online, but they still own 66%. So for the first, couple of years, they kind of just said, we'll watch them. We'll make sure that this doesn't get out of hand. But within probably 3 years, we were like 5 times the size of the parents' brick and mortar. And it was interesting because we were right adjacent to the parents' brick and mortar store. We started to think about, we see a big vision. There's a big company here. We want to invest. We want employees. We want automation. We want technology.
Because at this point, you guys are running around like chickens with your heads cut off. If you're making 3 times the revenue as the brick and mortar store, as 2 dudes, you guys are losing your mind.
It was 2 guys. We had maybe 1 person pick, pack, and ship in the back, but we had headsets on. We were answering the phone. We were shipping out orders. We were doing everything. We had a little 40-foot trailer on the side that we were stuffing with parts. We were drop shipping. I mean, I can remember we'd set our alarms for probably 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd get to Groton at 4:30, 5 o'clock. We would just spend the first couple hours printing out orders, manually typing in credit cards. Then the phones would turn on at 8 o'clock, and we'd just go balls to the wall from 8 a.m. to about 6 p.m. And then we'd go back home, eat a little bit of dinner. Then we'd have eBay messages to answer all night long, and we'd go till about 11 or 12 o'clock. And then we'd get up at 4 o'clock and do it all over again.
That is not sustainable, man.
We did that for a decade.
That is not
10 years. 10 years.
Man, that had to have been rough. Like, at what point were you like, holy cow, I need an accountant. These taxes are nuts. Like, when did you start hiring people?
So 2007. So Nick brought it online in 2000. I officially joined him when I graduated in 2001. We muscled through as pretty much till about 2007 or 2008. Finally convinced the parents to let us break apart from the brick and mortar store. That's when we got some space about 30 miles south, 25,000 square feet. We started investing into technology and infrastructure and people. So I would say it's about 7 years, 8 years after we brought the business online. That's when we got really serious. That's when we realized this was unsustainable, but we saw something a lot bigger. And we started to consume as many books on leadership and business and just everything we could just to learn about.
That really struck you that you read, or anybody that inspired you with that kind of thing?
Probably there's a lot of books, but probably the most important book ever read was Jim Collins' Good to Great. And they talked about a hedgehog concept, which, it's a focusing exercise of what can you be the best in the world at, and thinking about what your economic engine is, and then actually saying, whatever you think you can be the best in the world at, forget about everything else. It's just a distraction. So that was probably one of the most fundamental books when we decided to go European, because we were selling parts for everything, for Asian, for domestic, for Japanese, for European. And when we started to really think about what we could be the best in the world, we said we can be the best in the world at selling European parts, understanding European vehicles. So that was a really fundamental book for getting our business model down. So Jim Collins' Good to Great was a good one.
What did you feel that you were the best at? Like when you think of that good to great thing, and like what is it about you and your business partner that said, this is what we're going to do? Was there something you identified in yourself?
It was more of, we looked at we actually started to look at the underlying business, and we looked at where the roots of the company were, which was obviously import with a lean to European. We looked at the service aspect of the business, and we just took a really hard look at what we knew we could do really well and what our customers were saying we were doing well. And then maybe looked at the adjacencies that were like, what, we can't really go hard into this. We're not doing particularly well. The revenue growth is not there. So once we took that hard look at the business, that focusing exercise, that's when the business really started to take off.
CSF Cooling has always been at the forefront of quality products for a fair price. With a rich history stretching over 7 decades, they provide the best high-performance and OEM Plus cooling systems on the market today. CSF offers over 3,000 different cooling applications for the most popular makes and models on the road today. From classic copper brass radiators for Land Cruisers, Jeeps, and Datsuns, to vintage 80s Mercedes, BMW, and Audi and Porsche platforms, all the way up to new vehicles. Check out their expanding Classic Series lineup, and be sure to check them out at csfrace.com or on social media.
So one thing I've struggled with is my wife has a photography company, and I worked with her at one time. We started hiring people to do a photo booth thing that we had started up. We wanted to have kids shoot in a photo booth, whatever, have like the guests come and have their picture taken. So we had to hire people. And as soon as I started to hire people, I had trouble finding anybody that gave a shit as much as I did. That was the biggest struggle for me. And then we ended up not even doing it. We just quit doing it because we couldn't find reliable help. How did you, when you were first starting out and you had this business and you're just starting to hire people on, how did you make sure that you were bringing the right people on? And how did you, what was it about your leadership that had them buy into what you were doing?
First say that we made every mistake imaginable with hiring people the first decade. We still don't get it right sometimes, but I think for us, we learned pretty quickly, very early on, that having the right characteristic of people's moral and ethical compass, and are they good people and do they care just in general, that is probably more important than any technical skill for us. Are they just good people? Do they have inherent motivation? I don't believe that you can motivate the unmotivated. So we went through a process of, we've got to make sure that the character is consistent with what we're looking for. We can teach the technical side. So once we started getting the character right, that's when the culture really started to shape and form. And now certainly we got better as we established a set of value systems, and we started to hire surrounding our core values. But it was absolutely, we made a lot of mistakes. We now look at the character of the individual first and foremost, and then we look at the technical skills afterward. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. And to get people, we found to get people to care about the business as much as you, and they never will. I mean, we're the owners, we're the operators. But if you bring them along and get them involved in the discussion, the strategy, the direction, the decision making, that little engagement goes all the way. And it really bridges the gaps between just being an employee versus having a vested interest in the success of the company. Now, we've got things like equity now that we can provide our employees, but early on, we didn't have equity to offer. So it's
you talk about character. when you're interviewing people and doing that kind of thing, what are you looking for? What is good character in your mind?
So I go back to it, for me, probably the most important thing that I look for is energy. Is this person are they collecting? Are they creating energy, positive energy around them, or are they destroying or sucking energy away? So we look at the energy, just the aura of the person. That's kind of it's hard to actually measure that, but talking to somebody, if is this someone that's going to lift you up or someone's going to drag you down? Then again,
Yep.
we look at how motivated are these people? Are they going to have to be pushed, or they've got inherent motivation? And then just their philosophy on business. How do they think about the customer? How do they think about service? We would actually do, at least for me, what I would do is a lot of my interviews or my hires, I'd bring them out to lunch and take them away from the building and bring them into a setting where they're at a restaurant, and I actually look at the way that they treat the server, because that tells a lot about their character when something's wrong with the food. So there's little things that you can pick up on when you're talking to people, whether it's a formal.
Do you call ahead? Hey, whatever this guy gets on his burger, don't put lettuce on there, because I want to see how he reacts when you don't put lettuce on there.
You can tell there's little things that people do, So listen, it takes time. You build up the muscle to think and to ask the right questions, how to evaluate folks. But again, it's hard. People are hard. It's hard to get it right every time.
So were you driving, what is Scott driving as FCP Euro is growing and you're starting to hire people? I mean, do you even have time to like cars? I mean, it seems like you were pretty busy.
Yeah. So I have to admit, I was a little intimidated coming on the podcast, because I am in no way, shape or form what I would, what my team would consider an enthusiast. I don't, I have an appreciation for cars, but I'm not an enthusiast by any means. Back in the early day when I was younger, I messed around a lot with the 944s. So I had a couple of those, tried to do, bought the Haynes manuals, tried to do some engine swaps on a 2.3 to 2.3 liter to 2.5. But that was when I was young, when I was in high school. Once the business took all our time, everything kind of took a backseat. So it was just 24/7. It was business. Then I had the family. I've got 5 kids. So I've got a fleet of Mercedes SUVs, and we just picked up a Yukon Denali XL so I can fit 8 people in the car. So I'm a big Mercedes guy, but that's
what is it? So let me ask you this then: as someone who's not that doesn't have time for it anymore, what is it about the enthusiast? Because you guys are really deep into the enthusiast scene. Obviously, we're having this conversation. You guys are a big part of what Overcrest does now. Yeah. You've got the Golden Air car and the Cayman that you guys built, and all these different things that you were doing that are very enthusiast oriented. And from the outside, like a guy who's maybe working at JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or whatever would go, I don't get it. Like, what is it about doing this enthusiast stuff that really matters to FCP, and how does it drive your business forward?
Yeah. So for the most important thing for me is I actually think it's a pretty big advantage that I am not an enthusiast, and I'll explain why in a second. But I bring people into the organization that have a level of passion for European vehicles. I spend a lot of time talking to my customers over the last 20 years, so I've got a good sense of what they care about and what they don't care about. So I knew that, looking at, thinking about an automotive enthusiast, bringing the right people in to cultivate that was really important. But what I think is the advantage is that I'm one step removed. So I can look at the business side of it, and I can look at the enthusiast side, and I can play a role in the middle that is essentially saying, if I was too involved as an enthusiast, I may be biased. I may be so deep into a specific niche that I actually lose sight or focus of the broader business and how to run the broader business. So for me, it's understanding what your customers care about, bringing the right people in that are super, super passionate about European cars. And then my role is to try to understand the business, try to understand the customer, try to understand the enthusiast culture, and align it all together so it makes sense to build a durable and sustainable and profitable business. So there is
Yeah, I've looked at some of these brands that have gone off the rails towards enthusiast stuff, right? And I won't name any, but I will name the company that buys up all these brands, which is Driven Performance Brands,
sure.
Sentinel or whatever. They will go through and they will buy your company that you spent way too much money on race car parts. They will vacuum you up like nobody's business as soon as you've spent too much money on race cars. So it's definitely a delicate balance, man. I think you have to be involved with the community because you have to show some sort of moxie, some sort of skin in the game, right? Like you have to show that, hey, these parts that we're selling you, we actually know what they are.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to do that. But yeah, you can't go in, you can't take your swimsuit off and jump into the pool because it'll be all over. So as you were coming up and you're doing the eBay thing and you're starting to hire people and you're out of the brick and mortar store, so you got your own thing going on. At what point do you start looking at what other companies are doing? At what point are you like, whoa, I don't even know the companies that exist at the time. I guess it would be like ECS or Pelican Parts or whatever. They're in their infancy at this time as well, right? Everybody's kind of at their infancy in the online parts game. What was that world like then as you're starting to get in?
Yeah. So again, our arc is, we've got a 24 plus year arc, being, first to move in, online and then seeing the whole growth of the online with all kinds of fragmentation and players coming into focus. To be honest, for the first 15 years, so this is 2000 all the way to 2015 or 16, we paid almost essentially zero attention to any competitor in the marketplace.
On purpose?
Not on
Or
purpose.
just too busy?
We were just too busy. We were so hyper focused on our customer. I mean, our phones were just, they would not stop ringing, the emails, and we were native. Nick and I were native to the internet and chat rooms and engaging with people and customers online. So it was very natural just to continue to be involved in the conversations. And our customers just kept telling us what they would want to see, products, service levels, and we just followed the customer. And we almost, had a monomaniacal focus on the customer where we ignored everything else. And by 2016, we kind of picked our head up and, we were like, oh shit, like we are a pretty meaningfully sized business. We were kind of at the point where we were starting to be big enough to get noticed. And that's when we started to think, okay, we're well beyond the startup phase. We're capturing some market share. We're having some competitors notice us and do things that were catching our attention because they were seeing. So it was probably 15 years in when we. Do
you have anybody try to buy you out back then?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like the stage where people start to get bought out, right? You start to your head comes up and you go, whoa, this is pretty serious. And that's when people walk in the door because they want you at that time. That's when they want you.
Yeah, it's right when the entrepreneurs are starting to bleed and they're tired and they've put their 15 years in. That's when most will come in and try to and try to get you when it's the most, sensitive part of your evolution in the business. So we've been, approached several hundred times for either a private equity investment or a full buyout or an acquisition. But we have always.
You remember the first time? You remember the first time somebody came with a check and was like, "Hey, man, would you take $500 million for your company?" Because like two dudes that are basically starting and like selling stuff on eBay, that starts to go, whoa. I mean, that's a shock. It's not like you guys were handed mommy and daddy's business and said, "Hey, start this thing," and you manage it over here. It's already worth $1 billion. But so that would be quite a shock. And how did you say no? What was that like?
We were kind of a glutton for punishment. The business was growing. We're builders. We were operators. We were enjoying it, and we started getting inbound solicitation probably around 25, 30 million in revenue, and we're closer to approaching 300 million now. But around 20, 25 million, and Nick and I just had discussions, and we said, what would we do after? We're young guys. We're having fun. We're
golf clubs. They started a golf club company, man. Like, go back to the roots.
We're just like it's too early. It was way too early. And we said we see a bigger vision for this business, and we want to keep building it. And I think probably the most important is myself, Nick. We're not motivated by money. We actually, the best thing about this business is when I've got an FCP Euro jacket on and I'm at the airport, the gas station, or the marina, somebody comes up and like, do you know FCP Euro? Do you work for FCP Euro? And it's just amazing feeling.
Maybe.
And I said,
maybe I do. Maybe I know.
And I said, I might know a person there, but if you look at the over the last 10 years, the companies that have been bought by private equity who've cut and gutted and have good brands that have become irrelevant because of being over levered. We didn't want to be a business. We want to create a legacy, something that we're proud of, that customers, employees are proud of, and that's why we're still doing it, and that's why we haven't sold the business, and that's what we have no plans to. So.
Obviously, you're a pretty driven guy. How do you unplug, man? How do you go home? As a guy who's self-employed now, I just go, I'm always on. My email's always doing this. My phone's dinging like this. You find, how do you manage the work-life stuff as an entrepreneur?
It is probably that's probably the most difficult part of everything I do is managing the stress, managing the mental, the physical.
There's always work to do, right? No matter what.
Always.
No matter what, if you didn't need to sleep and didn't have a family, you could work for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never ever stop, right?
Yeah. It's very hard for me to unplug. I try to do things. I love cooking, so I'll cook dinner every night for the fam. A lot of boating, a lot of fishing, but literally I'm attached to this. It's 24/7. It's when I wake up at 2:00 in the morning to take a piss, I'm checking the email. It's not healthy. So I am just always trying to think about ways to better integrate work life, to unplug, to just focus on, am I doing the right things for myself to be here in the next 10 or 20 years? Because the stress will get to you, and it's hard. Sure you go through it.
Probably not on the same level, but it gets there. Like so we have the rally, coming up in May, and I just did another event for Hat at Airwater, and I have to stack all this podcast content up, but yet I'm also it comes in waves for me. It's not necessary all the time. I'm the type of person though that if I don't have any actual work to do, like if I don't have something in my project management software that says you need to do this, I'll create something to do. Like, how can I make something better? Where is the thing that I can make better? If I don't have anything to do, I'm going to try and you'll create work.
Yeah.
It's tough. And my kids will be like, Dad, what'd you run away? I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. Sorry. And my daughter will come up and she'll grab the phone and she'll take it. She'll go hide it somewhere. Because I'm working.
You need that though. You need sometimes kids to gut check and say, hey, you got to be present. It's hard.
It is
probably one of the most difficult things that I deal with in entire scope of my job is just being present with with myself or with my family. It's tough.
Yeah. Has there been, have doctors told you that you're too stressed out? Have they told you to chill out at all?
Oh
You
yeah.
mentioned being
Oh,
around 10 years or whatever.
oh yeah. Yep. So I mean, you have a lot of entrepreneurs and business executives that have hypertension and all kinds of mental and physical problems. So you just got to take care of yourself, and it's the mental is probably more important than the physical, and the mental is what I try to work on the most. And you know, yeah, it's a challenge, and one thing is I've done every job at this company, and at every level, whether you're on the front line picking, packing, and shipping a box, or you're at the top of the organization. I think that there's still life is hard, and there's challenges with both. And I think everybody is trying to deal with life post pandemic, and the demands of family and work, and a lot of just perpetual change and black swan events. It's everybody's dealing with it, so everybody finds their own ways to handle it and manage it. Some better than others. I'm not always. Sometimes my ways are not great, so I've got to kind of make sure that I'm managing my stress in the right way.
You say ways that aren't great. When you look back, is there any so I like to think of mistakes as usually like I'm glad I made those mistakes. 'Cause a lot of the time, sometimes there's some really bad ones. That was a doozy. But there's some mistakes that you look back and you're like, I'm really glad I made that mistake because it led me in this direction or that direction or anything like that.
Yeah, I try to look at every single one of the mistakes I've made as a learning experience. So I talk about I think we talk about luck, and I think luck plays a big part in business. And I've got a kind of an interesting view on luck, and the way that I learning in luck, things happen that some would say, oh shit, like that was just really bad luck. And then others can look at that and say, you know what, I'm glad this happened because I actually have an opportunity to go and address or fix this before it became a bigger problem. So there's different ways that, that I look at luck and good and bad decisions. And I think the one of the biggest mistakes that we ever made was when back in 2010, we were importing product from the Asia Pacific Rim. So it was E34, E34 and E38 thrust arms for the BMW 7 Series and 5 Series, and we started getting involved in bringing high margin products from the Asia Pacific Rim. So containers, and we'd buy an E34 thrust arm for $7. We'd press a polyurethane bushing into it, and we'd sell it for $125. So and we were naive. We were young. We had no idea that the quality from the Asia Pacific Rim was not from OE from the factory. And we ended up having to go through a NHTSA recall. So the ball joints were separating on the E34s and on the E38 center links, the drag links. And that was very early on when we were FCP Groton. So we went through the NHTSA recall. It was the shittiest experience that I've ever gone through in my life. We had 150 to 200 center links and thrust arms that were in people's cars that our customers were actually calling and saying, my suspension gave out and my car went into the guardrails. And looked at that as we fucked up. We played with fire. We were naive. We made a decision at that point. This is our opportunity to, number one, make sure that we built a highest quality OEM supply chain that we could. We just thought really, really hard about, where we're willing to sacrifice and where we're not. So the luck there was nothing was catastrophic. So people could look at that and say, oh, that's really bad luck. No, we looked at that as like, we got really lucky that the substandard product we were importing from the Asia Pacific Rim did not have catastrophic, consequences to life and limb for our customers. But we used that as a crucible to go and completely change our brand, our supply chain. We went through the warehouse at the time. We took every product from the Asia Pacific Rim. I think it was $300,000 worth of product. We put it right into a dumpster and we said, we're never touching this shit again. It is going to be if we wouldn't put this on our car, we wouldn't sell it to you. We took that philosophy internally to us and our employees. And we actually went to every single employee, and whether you're in the customer service or in the distribution center, and we said, if you see something on our shelves that you would not put on your car, come find us and we'll remove it right away. And that's still to this day, we're built by enthusiasts, majority of enthusiasts, and they drive that product selection. So again, not being motivated by money, we have the opportunity and the moral and ethic, the compass to make sure that we're selling high quality parts. So
that reminds me of this. The whole story kind of reminds me of, and coming out of that is, I don't know if you know what Jocko is. He's a Navy SEAL. He has a podcast, and one of the things that he always says is, there's this motivational stuff you see on Instagram sometimes, but he goes, bad things happen, good. Like in a way, it's good. We'll move on. Had to spend $300,000 throwing this shit in the dumpster, good. Now what? Had an employee walk out with like 10 sets of coilovers and sell them on eBay, and you had to fire them, good. Now we learned something else. So it's always, it's that mindset of like, good, now what? Good. What are we doing now? Let's go. Let's keep pushing forward. Let's learn from it and make things better.
Exactly. That's exactly what we've done over the last 24 years.
Yeah. So would this have anything to do with the lifetime warranty? This situation, did that bleed into having the lifetime warranty on everything?
It did. So when we were known as FCP Groton back in 2007, 8, 9, 10, our name was associated with lower quality product from the Asia Pacific Rim. Then we made a commitment internally to be different, to be better, to high quality only, but our customers still did not trust us. And it was still FCP Groton, low quality parts. So we said, you know what? We are so confident in our new supply chain, in the quality of the products, that we're willing to put a lifetime warranty on this. So we brought the lifetime warranty into play. We rebranded to FCP Euro, and that was our opportunity in around 2010 through 2012, which we went through that migration and transition.
How many people went, dude, what? Are you insane?
Lifetime
warranty?
Everybody.
Like, what are you doing? I still do that. I'm still like, how is this possible? This is like, from a business standpoint, it sounds like the dumbest thing to do ever. How does that work?
It's super. I'll go back to some really influential business books, but there is a book called Reinventing the Wheel by Chris Zane. And the way the story goes is that he goes and he presents. He's Chris Zane's bicycles, bike shop. It's in Connecticut, and they have this lifetime repair on your bicycles. And it was one of those things where he revolutionized this lifetime guarantee on anything to do with servicing your bike you bought from him. And there's a whole book about this. And he said he goes to these big conferences and he's got a jar of quarters. And he goes to the audience and he gives the audience the jar of quarters. And he says, I want you to take a few, take some quarters and pass it along. And what happens is he passes the jar of quarters and everybody takes one or two, but nobody takes the full jar of quarters, because there is a concept of people are generally good and they self-regulate. So that is the spark for the lifetime guarantee, that we said, you know what, we've got this guarantee and it's there if people need it. But ultimately, we believe that our customers are going to self-regulate and they're not going to take advantage of the company. And by and large, that has been the case. We have this lifetime guarantee. It's there if you want to use it. Yes, you can do oil, you can do consumables, you can do normal, your wear and tear, but it's a lot of people, our customers, again, by and large, are pretty honest. They self-regulate.
You kind of look like you got your brake pads in your hand. You're like, wow, these have been on the car for 60,000 miles. I could send those back to FCP Euro, but I would be an asshole if I did that, right? It's just like, you just can't, it's not going to, I'm just not going to do that because that's not the right thing to do. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But it's a funny anecdote to know that you could.
But listen, when you actually need it, when you spent $1,000 on a full suspension setup, and 3 years later something went wrong, and you know that you just call FCP Euro, and there's no questions. It's just, we will take care of you. When you actually need it, and there's a legitimate reason for it, it's a big thing for our customers. And
it's just like, this is going to sound like such a homer of a question, but like, why would you buy anything anywhere else if you can have a lifetime warranty? Why would you do it? I mean, this is like, not an ad, but like, why would you buy anything anywhere else if you can have a lifetime warranty on everything? Because I don't know, master cylinder for my car was $300. I got it warranted like this year. It was awesome.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen on eBay.
No,
from Joey's eBay store.
It's not. It's a great question, and I hope they wouldn't, but they do.
Anyway, yeah, it's awesome. I think it's like a perplexing part of the business, because you look at it and it just doesn't make sense. But the quarter thing, it really does make sense. Maybe everybody is deep down inside a good person. I think I'd like to think that. Okay, so you guys have had like all this incredible success over the years, but there have been, and this comes from kind of reading your how to navigate during COVID and after COVID. You wrote this really intelligent blog, all the different things. I mean, it was like, as a regular dude, I'm like overwhelmed by this. I'm sure there's people that understand, everything that was said there from an entrepreneurial standpoint. But how did COVID affect your business? Or even let's take COVID out of it. Like, how do stressful situations, like stressful economic situations, affect business? Even the '08 housing crisis, right? Where, you're such a big company that all this stuff, it has to affect like what kind of credit you can take out on things, interest rates, how much your parts cost, shipping. Like, you're going to have stuff shipped over from Germany. That stuff's more expensive because bunker oil went up. All these different things. The economy is absolutely going to affect you guys. So how do you weather stuff like that? Like, how do you stay nimble enough to be able to make sure that when something like the '08 housing crisis happens or COVID happens, that you're just not totally fucked and shutting the doors?
Yeah. So, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with being nimble, and you have to build a business that can sustain shocks from kind of anything macroeconomic. So as we have navigated the double dip recession, housing crisis, COVID, we have started to build mechanisms to make the business more nimble and more flexible. Whether it's financial scenario planning, so if something happens, we have a lot of risk mitigation strategies. Whether it's continuity planning, but ultimately, if you stay really, as a leader, if you stay really close to your customers and stay really close to your people, and you communicate and you're clear on what the challenges are, my view is you can overcome anything relatively quickly. We have, with COVID was probably the most challenging. I won't say probably, it was the most challenging time of my career. And I can remember, after the official lockdown, for 2 weeks, I had my senior leadership team and my leadership group. We just panicked. We didn't know what the fuck to do. We were just like, do we just start stripping costs out of the business? Do we let people go? We didn't know if the business was going to be shut down. And
you didn't know how long this was going to go on for either, right? Like 2 weeks, who knows?
We knew nothing. So we stepped back, and then 2 weeks into this, we said, you know what? How do we address this situation in a way that's actually going to, number one, keep our employees informed and motivated, keep us flexible and nimble, but also think about this situation with a relatively calm and collected head going into it. And what we did is we brought the entire organization together, and we said, you know what, we're going to wrap a theme around COVID. And because everybody was nervous, the employees coming in, and we were seeing things on the supply chain side. So we built a theme, and we called it Safe, Slow, Strategic. And we got the whole organization together, and we said, I think it was 150, 200 employees at the time. And I got up in front of the company, and I basically said, I've never dealt with a situation like this before. I said, this is a situation where you don't even know the scope of the problem. So how do you create a solution? Because you're creating a solution for an unknown problem. So I said, as an organization, we're going to focus on three things: safe, slow, strategic. We're going to get up every week. We're going to send an email. We're going to send a communication. We're going to gather together, and we're going to use these guiding principles to whatever comes our way, whatever the how long this lasts, or how how bad it gets. If we all wrap and rally around a common theme, we will get through this as a collective unit. And that small theme to COVID really made all the difference in the world, as we had to continuously shift and pivot and move.
Were the employees scared? Did you get was there like a feeling from everybody that kind of had to feel like you had to burden that?
Yeah, it was. That was one of the, it was myself and my head of human resources, and it was multiple phone calls a day. We were all, we sensed it. We were still open. We were classified as an essential business. So in our Milford operation, we had all of the employees in the distribution center that still had to come to work. So myself and Nick and my senior leadership team, we said that, and we could tell there was anxiety, there was nervousness, and we said, we are going to be there every single day. If we're going to tell our staff to come to the building and ship out packages, we're going to be there with them to show them that we feel that we're safe, and we're not going to ask them to do something that we would not do. So we were there every day by their side, in the building, in the facility. So there's little things like that we were able to calm our team down by saying, listen, like, my wife was pregnant with, I don't know which child at the time. There's so many but I said, listen, I said, my wife is compromised. We've got a baby, we've got a newborn. I'm going to make sure this place is safe, and I'm going to show you that I'm so sure that this place is safe. I'm going to be there with you every day. And that made all the difference in the world. So there's little things like that. It just, thankfully I've got a great leadership team that all shares those same philosophies of what it means to be a leader.
Yeah. So one of your things that I've heard that you say is plan the work and work the plan. Tell me what that means. Explain that to me.
I'm sure you've heard that from a bunch of the team members.
Yeah. What does that mean? I mean, it sounds obvious. Like, we look at plan the work. See, this is what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna do it, and then you do it. But it's got to be more complicated than that, because otherwise it's too obvious.
So there's first and foremost, you have to know where you're going. Having a clear vision and having everybody understand that vision is paramount.
Yeah, you got to aim at something.
You got to aim at something, and then is there a logical, defensible plan in place? Do we know the steps? Do we know the stakeholders? It's your traditional.
What do you mean by defensible? When you say a defensible plan, what does that mean?
Defensible. Like, if we wanted to, grow to 275 million in revenue for this year, it's how are we going to do it? What is the plan to get there? Is it just are we throwing a dart at the wall, or is there a clear plan? New customers, returning customers, lifetime value of customers, marketing activities. Does it all roll up? So the planning. Having a good plan is really the second part after having a vision. But probably the most important part, which I think I see a lot of businesses that are having trouble going through evolution and growth stages, is the working the plan, is the communication, it's the accountability, it's who owns it, who's the project owner, who's the project manager, how are we measuring progress, how are we following up, how are we communicating progress, how are we shifting and adapting, and it's working the plan is hard. You got to get in there every day, and you've got to figure out what's working, what's not. It's the pre-mortem, it's the post-mortems, it's it's everything surrounding the actual execution. So that's the muscle that we've, over the last few years that we've really tried to build. We've always had a pretty compelling and solid vision. We've got good talented people that can build good plans, but it's actually getting to the work in the plan, which
the ideas are easy, right? Coming up with an idea is easy. So how do you shit can the bad ideas? How do you know an idea is a bad idea? We have all kinds of bad ideas, man. I could tell you all kinds of them, but like, how do you know an idea is a bad plan that you don't go forward with?
Yeah, so it really comes down to the planning is going to tell you a lot. There's a ton of ideas. Everybody's got an idea on ideas are cheap. They're plentiful. But it's okay. Great idea. How would you translate this into an actual plan? And what does the stakeholders look like? What is the alignment process? That process of building a good cross-functionally aligned plan will inherently weed out the good ideas from the bad ideas. But if you also have a good strategic vision and there's anchors to it, it's going to really help you kind of vetting out some of the ideas and saying no. And I'll give you an example. Is one of our strategic anchors is total European ownership experience. And there's a lot to that because if you notice it's European. So if it does not, as we're thinking about ideas and there's been, hey, have you thought about selling parts? I wish there was an FCP Euro for imported or Japanese or Asian, or I wish there was, or this idea or that. I said, does it fit into our strategic anchor? We want to be the best in the world at building a total end-to-end European ownership experience. How does that directly translate into that? And if it doesn't, then it doesn't make the cutting floor.
So you guys basically have an obstacle course for ideas.
Yes, exactly.
Right? It's got to run through all these things, jump through the hoops, not fall into the foam pit of bad ideas for all the bad ideas.
You got it. Yep. And you'll get some things that fall through the cracks and that weren't fantastic, but it's a learning process with anything.
So how do you guys vision the future? Right? I look at right now, the cars that are on the road are 13, 14 years old. It is the oldest cars have ever been. Like the average age of a car on the road, oldest it's ever been. I don't know if that's because cars are getting so expensive. Nobody wants an EV. People are scared, so they're keeping their cars, whatever the case may be. But I think it's like a really good time for you guys. Lots of used cars on the road. People aren't buying new cars. Then as we slowly shift into EV, there's a whole, and I look at like what Bosch is going through in Europe, and maybe you can speak to that too as well. We're shifting into this whole transition where entire systems are being removed from cars. Cooling systems are gone. Well, not gone, but they're changing drastically. The combustion engine is gone. The charging system is becoming completely different. We don't have exhaust systems anymore. There's no turbos. There's no fuel. There's no injectors. All this stuff is all out the window in lieu of almost maintenance-free electric motors. And things are getting boiled down to almost like ball joints, brake pads, and wheel bearings, and going through tires every 300 miles. Like, how are we, like, what's the strategy, or what do you think the future looks like for a company like FCP?
Yeah, our view is, the automotive aftermarket, it's a $425 billion industry in North America alone, and then it's over $1 trillion globally. And part of that automotive aftermarket is cars, or what they call the car park. And there's still, in North America, 300 million vehicles on the road, and EVs or hybrid vehicles. It's still such a small portion.
I think people like to make it think it's bigger than it really is. I think it's like 5%. Very small.
So when we look at our sweet spot, our vehicles 5 to 25 years old, and probably our highest concentration of revenue are vehicles 10 to 12 years old. And those vehicles, you still have a tremendous amount of ICE that are still coming through in new car sales. So even if there was an acceleration of EVs, which I don't believe it's I think we've seen the peak of this, and I think it's going to be a much slower process. But we still have
like being at the drag step, and the EV industry is right next to you right here, and you're in the combustion engine industry over here, and the guy almost like ran the light a little bit and got a fault, and now he's got to come back, and the whole race has to start over again. Is almost what it feels like.
Yeah, we have long tail, 15 to 20 years. Let's assume that, EVs were 100% of the production capability, production line. We still have 15, 20 years of runway for cars, ICE cars. So, but we also think that, we've been in this industry for 24 years. So we're back in, the mid 2000s. There was a mechanical fuel pump for a Volvo that was $70, and now, or for a BMW. And now you've got an electrified, high pressure fuel pump that's close to $1,000. So we don't look at EVs as binary. We're seeing parts and pieces becoming electrified, which there may not be as many of the components, but there's going to be higher value components. But you also look at the drivetrain and the torque of some of the electric vehicles, and you see it burn through the axles and hubs and tires. And
I saw that Fisker Ocean put a limit. You can only, I think it's the Ocean. I could be wrong. Sorry, Fisker, if this is wrong. But you can only launch the car 500 times. And it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
It's all you get. We're only giving you 500 times. I'm like, dude, code that out immediately. What are we doing? I mean, there's got to be some serious wear and tear on some of those driveline components that we probably haven't even discovered yet.
The batteries still need cooling. So the cars are different, but we see huge industry, a lot of longevity, 20, 30 years at least for ICEs to be the majority of the car park in the North America. For us, right now we've always been primarily mechanical replacement parts. So, OE brakes, OE suspension. We have not really touched performance yet. We haven't touched accessories. We haven't touched body. We haven't touched collision. We haven't touched exterior. So we have still played our product portfolio is still very, very small in the whole kind of the breadth and depth of where we could go from a European offering standpoint. So we'll start over the next 5-10 years, start bringing in more performance, bringing in more, potentially tires, potentially collision, accessories, et cetera. So there's just so much room for us to expand into adjacencies across the European platforms that we service. So again, going back to the total European ownership experience, we're just offering a sliver of what the European owner would potentially want.
So what's next for you guys? I mean, obviously, at some point, you get big enough that you're like, okay, this is now ours. I mean, I'm sure other companies do debate if it's yours or not, but I feel like you guys are doing a really, really great job. Your year-to-year growth is extremely good. So at what point do you go, okay, now what? How do you continue to innovate in your space? Like, how do you continue to grow in the business that you're in?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, for us, it still goes back to following the customer, following the consumer. We spend a lot of time talking to the community, face to face, or, whether it's through looking at sentiment analysis on our CRM platforms. But if you are, intimate enough with the consumer. So I see a lot of these big businesses or mid-market businesses that get to the 200, 300 to billion range plus, where the top of the org, the leadership is so disconnected from the actual consumer. So for us, the way that we continue to innovate is that we have to have the top of the organization stay very, very close to the customer. Learn a lot, talk, engage. So I'm still very, very accessible. I spend a lot of time with customers, and
your email's right on the website. You can just go on there. I just get email us.
You can email me. My cell phone is on my signature.
Everybody email Scott. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I mean, my cell phone is on my signature. You can text me. You can call me. Like it's remaining accessible is and understanding the customers is paramount to innovate. But you also have to make sure that the infrastructure of the business is not set up with these big bureaucratic or administrative burdens. So it's not tied down to over structure or red tape that you've got to.
I think it's tempting to build around yourself too. Like you feel like you get to a certain level and you're like, oh, I can pay someone else to do that.
Yeah.
right? You can offset and just you can continually build this wall around you where you're. I think people see entrepreneurship sometimes that way, is that the longer I do it, the less scrappy I have to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they can slowly offload their work, and it doesn't sound like you've done that, which is probably part of the key here.
Yeah. So certainly as a business gets to a certain size, you have to protect it. Now we've got banks, we have minority investors. I've got a board. I've got financial covenants. I've got board reporting requirements. I've got this big, very large asset that it can't be scrappy. It's got to be thoughtful because the bad decisions at this size could be absolutely catastrophic. So I'm constantly balancing, how do I build a durable organization that can weather and mitigate risk, but still have those characteristics of scrappy entrepreneurship, can do some fun, creative, exciting things that maybe are out of the traditional norm for a business when they get big and bulky and they can't take risks. So it's knowing how to evaluate risk, where to take risks, where to build structure, where too much structure actually stifles innovation. So it's a constant evaluation of how to build an organization that can do both, can scale, but also be innovative at the same time.
So you said boat, and I know you live in Connecticut, so I'm guessing you have something on the Long Island Sound. Is what I'm thinking. I love boats. What are you piloting these days? You're captain of what?
So I've got a little 12-foot inflatable Zodiac in my driveway that I motor around Long Island Sound and fish in, and then for the family and for some of the fishing, I've got a 34-foot center console or dual console Southport. So it's kind of like one of those like crossover family boat, fishing boat. It's got a head, so the family can go to the bathroom if they need to, but I can bring the guys on to.
Have you taken it out of the Sound? Like how far? Like I love boats, dude. I love boats. I love watching vintage offshore racing videos.
Yeah.
My uncle is a yacht broker in the Chesapeake, so and he does power boats, brokering power boats. So I've always been around power boats my entire life, but I've never been outside the Chesapeake Bay, out into the real ocean. You've been out there? Is it a scary place?
We took it to Montauk once. That was a big trip. That was the first real big trip, and I've got to get some of my sea legs for the bigger trips out in the open Atlantic. Not quite there yet, but I think Montauk is pretty close.
I mean, right around the corner is nothing.
Yep.
It's almost like going into space, right?
Yeah.
You go around Montauk and you look out, and it's how much different than space is that for like a regular guy like us, right? To just start launching it. What's the difference? It might as well be nothing.
Yeah, it only goes from 2-foot chop to 8-foot chop. That's a little different of a climate and environment.
Yeah, man, dude, I really appreciate you spending time with me today. Your insights are great. I'm like soaking it all in as somebody who's trying to build a business